Next, we will have a Seaside Chat that is called Distributed Esports, playing together across the globe and beyond, which is a little teaser to some of the content that will be in there. It will be moderated by Quinton Sherry, who's a broadcaster since about 16 years. Used to be a co-host on a talk show, I believe, and he now does biz dev within a lot of broadcasting and esports and marketing, and also is one of the main directors behind GMR, who are organizing this very event. He will be joined on stage by Gordon Grech, who's co-founder and executive director for Arcafort. That his company specializes mostly in cloud services, hosting, and DevOps towards online gaming, amongst a couple of other things. Who recently started a new division called Spaceamics, where they are researching some of the technology in space to then bring it back to Earth. Much welcome on stage, Quinton Sherry and Gordon Grech.
Good morning, everyone, and I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of all our team from GMR to thank you for joining us along these 2 days of discussions. I've been following the majority of the panels and the keynote speeches we had earlier today, and obviously throughout yesterday, and thank you, everyone, for coming over to Malta, those international delegates who have joined us over the last days. And also thank you for all locals who teamed up in this important event for Malta to promote video gaming and esports. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank all our team who has been working very hard to make this jigsaw puzzle fall together throughout the recent months. I do hope that you are well enjoying what we have prepared for you. Next to me, as a childhood friend of mine, we come over from the same locality. We knew each other for the last, 15 years or so. Yeah. Gordon, the first time I met Gordon was around 15 years ago. That time, myself in another position, when he came over asking me to turn our locality into a Wi-Fi free zone. Back then, it was a dream for Gordon. Something which wasn't even yet very much discussed on a city level, especially where this was an idea which was still being developed even in major cities in Europe. Back then, we were working on this project, but time was against us. We did not manage to make it through. But a few years after, the government of Malta took over what we were proposing back then, and now we can say that there are around 120 different sites in Malta which are Wi-Fi free zones. And that was the idea Gordon started back then, and today we are pleased that the country had followed what Gordon was proposing back then. And throughout the last years, Gordon has co-founded his company, Arcafort, which is doing very, very well in Malta and beyond when it comes to cloud services. And that is why we are here today. Right. We are here to get to know better what Gordon and his team are doing in terms of cloud services, and also how can this be part of a wider opportunity to bridge cloud services, video gaming, and also esports, which is something which sometimes we tend to stay away from or shy away from it. Latency is the biggest problem of all. But Gordon are working quite well on this issue, especially with a number of projects that they've recently launched, and also the new venture that they recently started, which they are heading over to space. So Gordon, welcome and thank you for joining us, and thank you also for supporting Playcon 2022.
Sure. So first of all, good morning to everyone. Thank you, Quinton, for the great initiative. Really, really amazing. It's always amazing to see these initiatives come to life, all these people coming together, new industries, new ideas, and all of that. We're really glad to be participating in this.
Gordon, if you look into the fact that sometimes we tend to stay away from the online world because of the certain liabilities that one might find, especially when it comes to infrastructure.
Sure.
How are you managing to overcome such issue? But rather than just the technical part of it, is that convincing out there companies, users, to look into these cloud-based solutions, which, in my opinion, they are the future?
Sure, sure. So for many reasons, I mean, the world has, for the past decade, been shifting from on-prem computing to cloud computing, right? There are many reasons for this. We can go through them, but I think we've heard a lot of this already. But overall, total cost of ownership, security, reliability, capital expenditure versus operational expenditure, all these arguments, they pave the way kind of for cloud platforms. We've seen the adoption of cloud platforms starting with traditional services. So these services which are not so latency sensitive, so to say, there are primarily two different types of services which are latency sensitive and services which are not latency sensitive. To give an example, email is not latency sensitive. Whether you receive it immediately or it takes a while, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But then there are services which are latency sensitive, like VoIP, for example, telephony, right? Online meetings and this kind of stuff. If it takes long for the audio to arrive from its source to its destination, that becomes problematic. So we've seen the transition almost complete, I would say, to cloud platforms when it comes to reliable communication, so email, data, file exchange, and so on and so forth. We've also seen a shift when it comes to this, what we call unreliable or time-sensitive communication. Pandemic has accelerated it with online meetings, the requirement to have this online presence and whatnot, this real-time communication and stuff. This will also happen, or it is happening in the gaming world. So I believe that that is the way forward for many reasons. And I believe that with more advanced technology, higher bandwidth, and so on and so forth, we'll see it happen and become more predominant in the gaming industry as well.
We're looking at Malta to become a platform for video game development companies to come over to the island and establish their own offices in Malta. And also, the country is looking at expanding the esports sector. Is infrastructure a challenge, given that this is a very small country?
It always is, but I believe that we're doing surprisingly well as well. So I believe that Malta has higher than average bandwidth for internet connections when it comes to residential services and stuff. So that definitely is in our favor. The fact that we're an island means that we are more or less a bit more limited than mainland continent and countries which are not an island when it comes to connectivity, but through today's technology that is being addressed.
Mentioning technology, we mentioned also latency.
Yeah.
So what technology is helping you to fight the reality of latency?
Okay.
In a perspective that we need to go out there and convince more people to take this road to cloud services.
Sure, sure. So first and foremost, I mean, latency can come in two different forms. One of these forms we have control over, the other we don't. So maybe to explain a little bit what these are, we always use the analogy of a road, of a normal road, right, to describe the network, bandwidth being the number of lanes or simultaneous cars that can pass through the road, and latency being how long it takes us from the start of our trip to the end.
Don't take it in terms of traffic in Malta.
Yes,
at the moment.
for example, yes, you could. And it works out quite nicely, to be honest. Reason being, there are factors which we have control over, traffic being one of them, congestions in the road, roadworks, whatnot. Those things affect how long it takes us, right? But then there is the physical reality that you need time to get from one place to the next. And that is something that you can't really do anything about. So there is no magic formula to eliminate latency. You can make it as close to what nature allows us to do as possible, but really and truly then there is latency that we have to live with. And there are different techniques that can be adopted in order to minimize this latency as much as possible. One of these techniques being that you bring traffic as close as possible to its consumption, to its use, right? So if for an ecosystem which is based in Malta, ideally an element of the hosting, so where the servers are, where the equipment is, should be in Malta, so it is as close as possible to where it's being consumed. And that obviously then reduces the latency.
You've recently launched this new project, which is called Spaceomics.
Yes.
You're mingling around the idea of moving over to space. What does that mean?
Okay. So first of all, Spaceomics is a collaboration between Arcafort and Professor Joseph Borch at the University of Malta. It's a very interesting project because Arcafort is an infotech company doing data, doing all of these things. Spaceomics is going to be a space tech company, but with a focus on biology as well. Right? So what Professor Borch brings to the table is his immense expertise when it comes to the field of biology. What we are bringing to the table in relation to this company is our understanding of technology and so on and so forth. So we've sent 2 missions to space already in collaboration with the government of Malta, University of Malta, and next year, early 2023, Q1, we're going to send another mission. So we have some experience when it comes to sending stuff to space. And the idea here being twofold, right? So space is becoming more and more accessible. Today, private companies, universities, colleges who are interested in sending their research to space, it can be done. It is very doable. So we're there to advocate that and to make that more accessible. But we're also very much interested in the development of technology for future space missions, which obviously would benefit the Earth as well. To give a small example, the experiments that we've sent to space so far have been sent to the International Space Station and brought back to Earth. So it was an experiment, sender, brought back, we analyzed the results, right? But going beyond the ISS, it becomes increasingly difficult to bring the experiment back. So even though technology is being developed in this regard, but we want to play a part in building the technology that will allow us to send these experiments in space, activate them when we want the experiment to be activated, and then analyze the data and just send the data back. Because again, latency is a massive problem and bandwidth is a massive problem there as well.
What kind of experiments you're looking at or you're working on?
Sure. So that's why we're saying with a focus on biological technology. The 2 experiments that have been sent so far have been biological experiments, so foot ulcers, diabetes, and studies related to bacteria. The next one will be kind of related, but mostly biological experiments. So our main area of interest is how these microorganisms, and eventually maybe a bit more than microorganisms, behave in the environment of space. Applying that information then to Earth applications to understand a bit better how these things work.
Can we bridge the sectors of video game dev and this idea of heading over to space?
Yes. I think it can definitely be done. So we're seeing emerging economies like the African continent, for example. We take internet for granted in Europe, in Malta. In some countries, we're still not there. And in these countries, it's very, very challenging to get the infrastructure to the right places. What these countries do is they rely on satellite internet. And satellite internet today is a bit problematic, again, because of latency. The satellites that are in mainstream adoption when it comes to internet are very far away from Earth. So you can put 2 to 3 Earths between your computer and the satellite. Right? And that adds a lot of cost to latency. It takes a long time for the data to actually go to space and all the way back. Technologies such as Starlink from SpaceX, they're definitely making a difference because the satellite is so close to Earth that the latency penalty becomes negligible, so to say. So that is one area that will directly impact the gaming experience and gaming adoption on a worldwide perspective, I believe. Also, more and more things are going to space. So space at first was purely reserved for government research. Slowly, private companies are starting to step in, experimenting new things, and so on and so forth. And gaming can have kind of a participation or be part of space as well.
In what sense?
In the sense that computers in space are not so different than computers here on Earth. They do the same thing practically, with the only limitation that there is much, much less computing power in space. But what can be done on Earth in terms of basic computing can also be done in space. So there are ideas that certain data, I don't know, randomization data or numeric values and stuff can come from space. But there are also some ideas and some initiatives to organize a game which is actually hosted in space. So space-based Space Invaders or something of the sort.
That would be the day and reminiscence of our childhood times. But how do you see a company such as yours, which is a small and medium enterprise,
Sure.
Launched over the recent years? By very, very young co-founders.
Yes.
Where do you see your position as a company moving forward and also forecasting the years to come?
Sure. So first of all, I think that the role we play today is that we have substantial experience when it comes to businesses of all sizes. So we have smaller clients, very big clients, and everything in between. And we're there to assist every step of the way, from the foundation of the company all the way to the company's expansion. So that's one thing. We have a wide skill set. We cover a lot of expertise and whatnot. But we also have a data center in Malta. So bringing my argument back to what we discussed before, latency, caching, and so on and so forth, definitely we can help. As a company, we're moving more towards the cloud. So our services are getting better and better every day. We keep on investing in cloud technology and new and innovative technologies that we believe that will play a very important role in the future.
Gordon, thank you very much for your time and good luck with your projects, yourself and your team. Thank you for being part of Playcon, and we do hope that this conversation was interesting to all of you here. Thank you, and have a good day for the rest of the morning.